Welcome to another episode of Behind the Veil, where we delve into realms of high strangeness and exploring phenomena that challenge our understanding of reality. I'm your host, Mike Hughes.
And I'm your co-host, Christian Julian, and today we'll be speaking about Bigfoot and other strange creatures that roam the woods.
Absolutely. And we have a fascinating guest who has dedicated his life to investigating strange creatures and unexplained events. Bryan Seech is the founder of two influential research groups, the Center for Unexplained Events and the Center for Cryptozoological Studies. For over 2 decades, Bryan has been on the front lines chasing down leads and clues to shine a light on some of the world's greatest mysteries. You may have seen Bryan share his expertise on TV. He's appeared on Destination America's show Monsters and Mysteries in America. Bryan was also featured in independent documentary Mountain Devil: The Search for Frank Patterson. In addition to his TV work, Bryan has been a guest on numerous podcasts and radio shows. His tireless efforts to uncover the truth about our world have made him a respected voice in the paranormal community. Today, Bryan is going to give us an exclusive behind-the-scenes look at some of his investigations into Bigfoot and other legendary creatures. Get ready for a mind-blowing journey to the fringes of reality as we peer behind the veil with cryptozoologist Bryan Seech. Bryan, welcome to the show.
Welcome.
Oh, thanks, guys. Thanks for having me on. It'll be a fun night.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. It is. I can talk Bigfoot all day. That's my thing. Anybody knows me. I'm always down for that. So, Bryan, let's just get right into it. How did your curiosity for cryptids and Bigfoot all start?
So growing up in the 70s, I was always interested in monsters and UFOs and things like that. And during the 70s, it was a great time to read, especially UFO magazines. There was a plethora of UFO magazines on the market. So I started to read those. And I did find out, like in some of those UFO magazines, that they actually had, in some of them, UFO encounters also had Bigfoot encounters with them. And when I first learned about that, and especially like in Pennsylvania, I was like, wow, maybe this is an actual real monster that I could study instead of watching just all the monsters on TV.
Yeah.
And I just found, like, later on, as we, when I met my wife, Terry, and we got married, that she was interested in all of this too. So, we formed our group Q, Center for Unexplained Events, and that was in 1986. What we wanted to do is make the group kind of like a generic name, and to take that name and research all unexplained phenomena. It was not just Bigfoot or UFOs, ghosts, right. Everything, Bermuda Triangle, time slips. So we just went from there, and later on in 2012, we actually had our new group, Center for Cryptozoological Studies, which we wanted to focus that group just strictly on cryptids, or hidden or unknown animals not recognized by science. So we have a small team, maybe 8 people, who go out and research this, and we attend conferences and speak at lectures and things like that. So we're having a blast, guys.
So let's just kind of talk about, obviously you've been in this for a long time, and people respect you for the work that you've done. Kind of get into some of your work. What have you found? What has driven you to keep doing this for so long? I mean, as anybody knows, trying to research Bigfoot or trying to find Bigfoot can be a futile effort. But what has kept you going? And let's talk about some of the things that you've discovered along this journey.
I just like for myself and my wife, I can speak for us. It's the hint of the unknown. Could something that big actually be out there? When you talk to the eyewitnesses, especially the ones we have, we believe the ones that we actually talk about. We believe they have seen what they said that they've seen. Now, again, how something that big could remain hidden or elusive is anybody's guess. But our goal is very, very simple. I want to see something. I want to see it, hopefully with my wife, so she could say, "Hey, all this time and money we spent on this isn't a waste." He's right. This thing exists. And right now, that's my in the later years here. That's my only goal. I want to see it. If I can see it, I can prove to that little kid that was watching all the documentaries in the 70s that, hey, this thing exists. You did not waste your time. although we don't consider it a waste of time, just being out in nature
Yeah.
with our group members, who are some of the greatest members you'd ever want to have, and enjoying nature, guys. I think a lot of
Yeah.
researchers, they lose track of that. You go out in the woods constantly. You're seeing, you're hearing things. You're seeing different wildlife. That's what makes it worth worthwhile. Even if we never see anything, we've heard some unknown screams, things like that. Beaver Creek State Park. If you go into BFRO and type in the Ohio Howl, we heard that. We heard that in 2014
Yeah.
down at Beaver Creek State Park. We've had a rock thrown at us also at Beaver Creek State Park, from a hillside right into a pond next to where we were walking. So uh, instances like that, when things like that happen, you're like, wow, we think there is something out there. Just the howls of how it could be there, though. Boy, that's the $1 million question.
Yeah, and any logical person who doubts Bigfoot's existence, I can completely understand, because the idea, just like you said, that a giant 8 to 11 foot tall, giant hairy creature could be roaming the woods of North America, seems that hasn't been discovered yet, seems ridiculous. But I mean, like you, obviously you hear these stories from people, and there's also so much history and lore to it, especially within native cultures. I mean, there's even reports of Leif Erikson apparently
Yeah, I
caught
heard that.
into had Bigfoot reports. I think
Hmm.
there's been presidents that have had Bigfoot reports. Um, so what made you a believer, or do you believe in this? What do you think there is really a creature out there?
I think that the phenomena itself is real. Okay, people are seeing. To me, no doubt, the people that we've talked to, they've seen something.
Yeah.
It's altered them, actually. In some cases, people. We talked to a gentleman who, he says, "Oh my, this happened in '73 in Beaver County," and all of a sudden he was a big guy, right? He had goosebumps up and down his arms, and he went like this, and he like shook, and he said, "I haven't thought about this in years until I talked to you." Extreme physical reactions from some of these people.
Yeah.
It's like it happened yesterday. Longtime hunters, they've been out there and they've seen this creature and they refuse to go back out in the woods. So,
Yeah.
boy, if some of these people are lying, you know what? They're pretty damn good actors and they should be on TV, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there a way that you kind of detect if someone might be lying to you or maybe pulling a hoax on you, or like what is the process that y'all kind of go through to really validate what someone's saying?
I I think too, like when we like, when we can, at all things, we like to talk to the people face to face. You kind of watch body reactions. You can kind of sense, if you know if somebody's coming. Hey, I don't want my name used. I'll take the time. I'll fill out a report. We have a very lengthy reporting system. It's about 47 questions developed by Dr. Paul Johnson, a longtime Pennsylvania researcher. And if they kind of do all that, and you kind of get a sense if someone is like trying to pull your leg, or just it's kind of, after a while, it's kind of like a gut feeling. It's when you look
Yeah.
into their eyes, you
Yeah.
could tell when somebody's lying. Or again, it's taken a long time to find that. But any of the sightings that we actually talk about, or we really push for eyewitness drawings. Any eyewitness drawings that we put out, things like that, we believe that they've seen. But I think any researcher who's been in it a little bit, they kind of, they get a sense if it's real. If they really want their name out too, we're like, hey, maybe they're just looking for publicity. A lot of it's gut instinct too. I will
Yeah.
say that a lot of it's gut instinct. It's like, I think this guy's crazy, or oh my god, he
Yeah.
really did see something, but he doesn't
Yeah.
want credit for it. He doesn't want to be on the front page or doing all these things. He just wants someone to talk to. And a lot of these
Yeah.
people, it's almost like kind of like a therapy.
Hmm.
Oh
Yeah.
my God, they actually believe. Now, just to shoot a little story real quick. We had a Bigfoot day down here at Tomlinson Run State Park, and that's in Hancock County, West Virginia, the smallest county in West Virginia. And he says, I saw this creature, and I could tell you it looked like the Jersey Devil. These deer were running. This is like in the '90s, the late '90s. He actually drew what he saw, and it was like a hairy creature. It almost had a horse-like face, and it had wings. And he said, some deer ran out from the forest into this glade, and this creature came out after him, and it saw the eyewitness and his son, and he said this thing ran a couple of steps, it jumped, and then it took off. He said it actually jumped first, and then his wings spread, and then it took off. And he says, I didn't want to tell anybody else because they thought they would think I'm crazy. But then when you gave your speech and you talked about winged entities, Mothman, things like that, hey, you're somebody I can talk to. And it was like the guy, just like extreme relief. We're going to be meeting with him in a couple of weeks here, and he doesn't live too far from me, actually. And we're going to go out to the sighting location, which is built up now compared to what it was. And I want to have him retrace his steps, what they saw, him and his son saw. And just looking at the gentleman and talking to him, I mean, really, I don't know what the thing he saw. I have a drawing of it, but I believe he saw what he saw.
Yeah. So, obviously when it comes to Bigfoot, the more you look into it, the stranger it gets. Has your personal opinions of the Bigfoot phenomena changed over the years as you've delved into this cryptid reality? I know that mine have. I mean, I used to think years ago that you would hear people talking about, oh, Bigfoot's an interdimensional creature. I used to think those people were lunatics. And I was like, that's just an easy out as an excuse of why it does what it does, and it disappears and does all these other things. But the more that you look into it, and the more that you delve into this Bigfoot phenomena along with other cryptids, the more crazier and bizarre it gets. And granted, most of these stories are all anecdotal, but there's just no way that so many thousands of people who've come out with the age of podcast and the internet, people who don't even know each other, who can be sharing stories that are very real. And just like you said, you have a gut instinct when people are sharing some of these stories, because if these people are bullshitting, they deserve an Academy Award for.
Exactly.
They should be in Hollywood.
Exactly.
They should be in Hollywood writing horror movies, because
exactly.
I've heard some stories, and you just know, like, that person's not bullshitting. This person saw something, and whatever it is that they say they saw, they believe that they saw it.
Yeah.
Now, I've heard plenty of stories on podcasts and stuff, and I go, I don't think that guy's telling the truth, or whoever it may be. Like, I'm just not buying it. That's my.
Oh yeah, we've all heard them, right, guys? We've all heard, like, well, boy, this is stretching imagination even more than what you can believe. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. But, as I said, I used to think that this whole, like, interdimensional thing and cloaking and all that was nonsense. But I've had some personal experiences out in the woods that have definitely shifted my view on reality of what is possible. How about yourself? I mean, obviously with the hundreds, if not thousands of stories that you've heard, either personally or anecdotally or on podcast or whatever, how is this phenomenon shifted in your own mind of what is possible and what is not?
Well, I've been saying, my wife and I both, there's if this is a puzzle board, you got that missing piece of the puzzle. Something connects these Bigfoot things. It may be too easy to just say, hey, that's a giant ape out in the woods. Mm-hmm. Pennsylvania has a high strangeness, a bunch of high strangeness reports, everything from UFOs in conjunction with Bigfoot, these creatures disappearing, footprints going right in the middle of a field, disappearing, them being shot at, they disappear. Some people hear something huge in the woods, but they don't see anything. Okay.
Yeah.
So a lot of, what we call, and I do consider myself too, cryptozoologist. Our group looks at a science base. Hey, we're looking for physical evidence of something huge walking through the area, whether it be prints, destroyed trees, maybe destroyed, tore up animals. That's how we start on all of our investigations, whether it's Mothman or Dogman, throw the cryptid at. We pretty much research all of them. Yeah. But then you say, okay, how could something be out there and you don't see it? Or why isn't there more prints? I know that with the leaf clutter, you walk on it, it presses back up, all the scientific, blah, blah, blah. But there's something to this puzzle. I don't know if this creature can do some of the things that people say, and I'm not saying that this thing can disappear or uh some of the thing, some people say maybe it does mind speak, maybe it, I don't know. I don't know what it does. But another thing, when you talk about with your gut, to me there's something missing with this puzzle.
Yeah.
I believe the phenomena is 100% real. Don't get me wrong, I do. But after all these years, I think it's like, shouldn't we have more physical evidence? Shouldn't we have more print? Shouldn't we have this?
Definitely.
Maybe even a body by now. It's like, what's it going to take to actually say, hey, there's something else out there? And if being a quote unquote cryptozoologist, if you mention like, hey, there were some strange lights in the air right before this creature was seen. One of the newer phenomena, the newest phenomena, like within the last 10 years, is people are seeing these orbs. We call them light spheres. Okay, people were out in the woods. They were out in the woods looking for Bigfoot. Okay, and all of a sudden they're seeing these, either basketball size or smaller orbs flying in the air, flying through the trees, almost look like they're intelligent. Okay, and then that precipitates either a Bigfoot yell or a sighting of a Bigfoot, or same thing vice versa. They might see a Bigfoot and later on they see these orbs or spheres. I don't know if they're connected. This could be a thing of two different phenomena just crossing paths. But again, guys, I wish you guys can tell me right here and now what it is, because I'm open to all suggestions.
Have you encountered any compelling evidence during your research that suggests the existence of these creatures?
As far as prints, when I was with the old PA Bigfoot Society up on Chestnut Ridge in I think it was 2002, we were walking down this. It was early November, and we were walking down this road, and off to the side, as we were walking, it almost looked like, it's like, hey, this kind of might look like a footprint. So I knelt down, and I had to pick a couple of leaves that were on top of it, and I picked up very carefully, not to distort anything. And we saw like a 14-inch that looked like a human-sized print, but one was 14 inches. And I looked over, and I saw I'm waiting. This kind of looks like one too. So I kind of pulled some of the leaves out, and this one was about 7 inches. But you know what? The weird thing, there was one each. Okay, and we looked in the surrounding. We're saying, okay, let's look forward, let's look backward, let's look sideways, let's look across the road, and we didn't see anything else. Now the guy, the other group we were with, they took casts of it. I don't have those casts, but they have it. Was it a Bigfoot? We never called them Bigfoot. We called them unknowns. So, and then we've heard, like I said, we've heard the screams. We didn't catch it on tape. We heard the screams a couple times. We have seen an orb. I don't know if it's in conjunction with the Bigfoot, but we did see an orb right after we heard a Bigfoot scream in a place called Livermore. And it was kind of like we split up into two groups, and myself and about four others, we saw this. It was on it's called the Penn Ohio Trail, and this spear, it was white, and it was like kind of like coming like this. It was almost like it was. The way I put it is that the old railroad lanterns. If a railroad worker was walking up and was swinging a lantern, that's what it looked like. Yeah. And as it got closer, we tried to walk closer to it, and we tried to get it on the night vision. But it was kind of a weird, because we saw it through the night vision, and then when we put the night vision down, we didn't see it. It was like, this doesn't make sense. Yeah. And we start walking towards it, and it just disappeared. Yeah. Again, I wish somebody could explain that to me. It wasn't our other group, because our other group was about half a mile, quarter, and they didn't have the lights, and they were going dark. So again, I don't know what that was, guys. I really wish I knew what that was. But those are as far as our possible evidence or whatever that we actually had. Those are it. We don't have any other good casts. We don't have fur or hair or whatever you want to say. We wish we did. Yeah. But we haven't been that lucky, or we're not that great of researchers, whatever one you want to say.
And the orbs are a thing all in itself, and I've actually experienced that. I've seen that firsthand, and it's an interesting story because My orb incident happened before I ever heard of orbs. Never. This is, in the infant stages of the internet. This is back in 1999, in just about 30 miles south of Atlanta. I was out on a date with a girl, and we were basically looking for a place to go hang out at, so to speak. And she lived in a very rural part of Georgia, and we were trying to find. It was late. We were just trying to find a place like to hang out at. So we ended up driving through the woods, and we found this road. It looked like it was going to be a subdivision eventually. So let me paint the picture for you. This road branched off. On the left-hand side, it was thick woods. On the right-hand side, it was a grassy field, but it looks like this area that would actually butted up against a barbed wire fence with more woods. So it looked like they cleared this out, like they were potentially going to put homes there. But it was where the field was, the grass was probably about 3.5 feet high. And we drove all the way down this road to an empty cul-de-sac, and there was no lights out there. There's no street lights. There was no houses or anything like that. It just looked like it was pre-development is what they were getting ready for. And it almost looks like they kind of forgot about it because the grass was so high, and it looks like it just never happened. But anyways, so we were out sitting outside on my car, and we were only able to see via moonlight. The moonlight was actually pretty bright that night, so we could see. And when you get out in the woods, once your eyes adjust, you can see pretty much, pretty well if you have decent vision.
Yeah.
So anyways, I was out there, and we were facing towards the field with the woods towards our back. And we had something that caught our attention go through the field. I got a very bizarre feeling on top of that, very eerie feeling. But we're looking over, and something catches our eye, and we see something that our eyes cannot quite make out. It looked like almost like a smoky, kind of blurry looking object that was literally gliding through the field. And at first we're thinking, okay, it's got to be a deer or something like that. Our eyes just aren't picking it up. We're not trained on it properly. We could actually hear like leaves rustling or the grass making noise. So it made a noise as it was traveling through the grass. But again, you couldn't really quite make out what it was. You could just see that something was there. So it eventually passed and went out of our sight and disappeared. And I didn't really think much about it. It just was like a kind of a weird, eerie feeling when we saw it. But again, we didn't really think much about it, and just kind of went back to doing our thing. And then a few minutes passed, and all of a sudden it came back from the direction that it exited from. And again, it was the exact same thing. We could hear what sounded like grass rustling, and you could see something moving through the field. It almost looked like smoke, like gliding through the field. And this time, our awareness was super heightened, and for whatever reason, I had this really sense of fear that overcame me when I saw this object, and she did too. And it did kind of the same thing. It eventually it passed right in front of us, and then it just disappeared into the night. So we were both freaked out. I ended up turning the car around, and I faced the car towards the field. And if this thing comes back, I'm going to turn the headlights on so we can actually see what it is. And I was alarmed because I was like, this couldn't be a deer, because a deer wouldn't make a second pass right by us again. That seems like abnormal for, an animal to do that. So anyways, we went back to just hanging out and talking, and all of a sudden I had my back towards the field, and she was looking towards the field. I was looking at her, and next thing I know, I hear her go, "Oh my God, there it is again." And I spun around and I saw it. And this time it was a little bit clearer, and honestly, the thing that I saw, the best way to describe it, if you've ever seen the movie The Predator,
Oh, yeah.
that's what it looked like. It looked like a translucent figure. It didn't look like a human being, like you could see arms or anything like that. You could see weird kind of shapes on it, but it was nothing that really made sense. But it looked like the predator. This thing traveled across the field, and then it went right over to this barbed wire fence that butted up against the woods. And when it went over there, it disappeared for a second, and then all of a sudden I look over and I see what I can only describe is a glowing rod that was about 3 feet
Wow.
long, as wide as my leg, maybe, thicker than a baseball bat. But it wasn't very bright. It was dimly glowing like a very dim fluorescent bulb. I saw it traveling above the barbed wire fence. And your brain, whenever you see something like that, your brain just goes into overdrive mode. It's trying to make sense out of what you're seeing. So my mind was like going crazy, like, what are you seeing? And it's funny enough, is that I actually convinced myself I was seeing the top of a golf cart. Like if you were looking at a golf cart from a side
Yeah.
angle, like I was looking at the roof of it, and
Uh-huh.
that would explain like the sound of like the grass moving. I'm like, okay, maybe that's somebody in a golf cart. But it was completely ridiculous for me to even think that. But your brain just can't process what you're seeing.
Trying to bring it to reality,
Yeah,
you know?
you're trying to bring it to reality, and your brain's just like, I'm not having what I'm not I'm not believing what I'm seeing. I got to make sense out of this. So if that wasn't strange enough, it eventually, all of a sudden, it turned into a glowing ball of light.
Huh. Wow.
And it was it went over. It was basically, it was traveling a couple of feet as I was watching it, and it looked exactly like somebody holding a flashlight, as you described, like somebody with a lantern or whatnot.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it looked like. It looked like somebody was holding a flashlight, and I even yelled out, and I was like, "Hey, who is that?" Waiting for a response,
Hmm.
and I never got a response. It was just sitting there. But one of the most bizarre aspects about it is that this is pitch black at night. If that was a flashlight, it would have lit us up. It would have lit the car up. It would have lit the grass up. It would have lit up something. Nothing was lit. So this light was not emitting any light
That's
outside of the light.
that's
And that,
interesting. I'll cut to a quick story on that. We had
sure.
a I actually know this gentleman who, when he was a young kid, he lived in Venango County. So him and his friend were sitting by a river, which I think might have been the Clarion River, and so they're looking. They see this spear. I'm trying to think what color it was. Maybe it was might have been a yellow spear. So he says it's coming down. It's following the river, and he said it looked like it was self-luminescent. And he said the weird thing is it was hovering not too far over for the river, but there was no reflection whatsoever in the water. Now, how
Yeah.
does that happen? If
Yeah.
it was a
Vampires.
light or something, there should have been something.
Vampires.
But this didn't. This did not light up the river below it. It was just self-luminescent. It was following the river, and it started to come a little closer. And of course, they left because they were younger kids. And he says it did not. You could not see that reflection in the river. Now
Yeah.
that's weird.
Yeah, it's super
Oh, for
weird.
sure.
And for years, I actually went on another podcast, Shannon LaGrose,
Oh, Shannon, yeah,
yeah, Into the
saw her about a
Fray,
month ago at Monster
and
Fest. Yeah.
I told that very same story on her podcast years ago. And when I told that story, you can go and find it. Um, I told it as a ghost story because that's what I thought it was. For years, I thought that I just encountered a ghost. Like the shadowy, translucent thing that I saw was very like ghost-like. So I just figured I saw a ghost until, and mind you, that happened in 1999. And as the years have gone by, I've heard so many stories of people seeing the exact same thing that I saw. And then one day I heard someone on a podcast say, "Yeah, I saw this glowing orb, and the weird thing was it didn't emit any light." And my jaw hit the floor when I
Yeah,
heard
yeah,
that because it validated what I saw. It was very
exactly.
it was very torturous for me because it's like seeing a giant 10-foot purple dinosaur in your backyard and you saw it with your own eyes, but you've never heard of anybody ever seeing a giant 10-foot purple dinosaur in the
Yeah.
backyard. So for someone to actually see and tell a story of something very similar to what I saw, it was it was comforting, and
Exactly.
it validated what I saw. And then some of Ron Moorhead's work. I've never heard of anybody ever describing a rod before, but I
Ron
was
did though, I think. Yeah.
yes, he did. He in his Quantum Bigfoot. He's got
Yes.
a documentary
Excellent.
in a book. I was watching the documentary, and he was describing about the stuff that happened in the 70s. I do believe that's when it happened. Correct? Was it 60s or
Yes. Yes.
70s?
Yeah. It was 70s. Yeah.
So he described, as I'm sitting there watching this documentary, he described seeing glowing rods, and I just it blew my mind. I was like, okay, there we go, checking off something else. So now, after hearing Ron Moorhead's story about glowing rods, check, someone else has experienced that. But I'm also hearing that correlating with Bigfoot activity. So when I started hearing these weird correlations about orbs and Bigfoot and other cryptids, that's when that story changed from a ghost story to just a high strangeness story. So I
Exactly.
don't really know what to make of it,
I don't
but
either. I don't either.
I mean, you hear those stories, right? I mean, how often do you hear about, or let me rephrase that. Well, let me double punch that story question. How often do you hear about orbs or rods or any of that, and how often do you hear about those connected to Bigfoot sightings?
Well, more, like I was saying, probably more in the last, honestly, about the last, for us, last 8 to 10 years. I mean, we started to research that phenomenon because we were ingrained in the Bigfoot community, and some of these researchers were saying, "Hey, I was out there, I'm looking for Bigfoot, and I'm not looking for UFOs. I'm not looking for orbs." And they're seeing some of these things. Um, I don't know if there's a direct correlation. I don't know, but I know that more people that we talk to are seeing them. Uh, is it just people finally talking about them? And kind of like the Dogman phenomenon. When we started researching that in 2007, before a lot of researchers really start getting into the Dogman phenomenon.
Yeah.
And it's like once the phenomena comes out, more and more people start to come out. So were those uh, were those sightings always there? And now people, okay, now I can start talking about a giant creature, wolf-like creature that looks like, I hate to say it, looks like a werewolf. I
Yeah.
mean, Linda Godfrey broke ground on that with the Beast of Bray Road. My friend Jody Cook, he was researching out of Ohio, and then myself, my wife Terry, and Fred Salugas, we've been researching since '07. Now we don't get that many reports at all. I think since '07 we might have like 15 or 16, and that's in like the 2 or 3 state uh, that we Pennsylvania, Ohio, and West Virginia. So it's not a lot over that period of time. Maybe we get one a year, one old one a year, but people were saying, you're not going to believe me. This thing looked like a giant wolf. It looked like a
Yeah.
werewolf. And when they even say the word werewolf, it's almost like, oh, I don't even want to use it, but this is what you would understand, like a Hollywood werewolf. I'm
Yeah.
not saying people are getting bitten and turning into
Yeah.
werewolves
No, I
when
get
the
it.
moon. I'm not saying it. Just by
Just appearance.
looks wise, yeah, that's
Yeah.
what it looks like.
What is the overall tone of these encounters that people are having? Is it like a fearful encounter, or are they just like, are they like just frozen in shock? Like, what is it that they're reporting on?
So, which phenomenon, the werewolf or
Oh,
Bigfoot?
I'm sorry. Bigfoot. Let's go to Bigfoot.
Just kind of like I can't believe that this thing's out there. I can't believe I saw this. This is we're on the East Coast. This is a West Coast phenomenon, right?
Yeah.
You can't have a Bigfoot in Pennsylvania or West Virginia or Ohio. It doesn't make sense. Uh, but when they see it, it's interesting. When somebody who's not interested at all catches a glimpse of one of these things, they go into a phase that they start researching it. They go
Yeah.
online, they research it.
I mean,
They
you have
start to
to.
see all these other people seeing these things, and it does make them feel better. It's like, I was just driving down. The most common like sighting too is people driving down the road in the middle of the night. This creature runs across the road. They're not they're not expecting a big ape like creature. It's just to run across the road, and they're stunned. Their senses tell them, science says this creature doesn't exist. So what is this thing that just ran across the road in front of me? Or what's this thing in my backyard? What's that howl? What's that scream? Why did I find these big prints in the woods? What's going on? And we're in a culture now. I always call it like it's almost like we're in a one-day culture now with Facebook. Something comes out,
yeah.
okay, there's a murder, there's that submarine that went
Yeah.
imploded. Boom. There's like a couple days. Everybody's on there. Everybody gives their opinion. Everyone's a submarine expert. Just for a day, right? And then what happens? A day or two after,
Yeah.
they forget about it. We're on a cycle, a quick cycle now.
Short attention spans for sure.
And short attention span. But here's the thing with the Bigfoot phenomenon. For the short attention span, this has been going on for years, and the phenomena is still happening all over and over, repetitious. You read a report from the East Coast, it's almost exactly what it is in the West Coast.
Yeah.
Their habits, what they do, almost what they look like. So I just believe our culture, if there was nothing to this, if say only a couple sightings here or there, this phenomenon would die. But guess what? It's actually getting stronger. It's not dying out. But people are seeing something, no doubt.
Definitely. And the thing is that you can look at historically, different cryptid sightings, and you could hear things about, like, for example, Mothman. That was kind of a one-off type thing. You're not hearing like, oh, I saw a Mothman the other day, or you're not hearing that like you're hearing about Bigfoot stories.
Yeah.
So when people try to say, oh, that was just, it's people making up stuff or whatnot, I think differently on that, because there's been plenty of historical cryptid sightings that came and went. But the things that continue to keep happening is Bigfoot, Dogman, even Chupacabra died off the scene quite some time ago. And now, people still kind of talk about it, but I don't even really know if that's really what it is.
Winged entities. We call them winged entities.
Yeah.
And we get them. We just got that report, that order one, but people do come to us because we actually present that in our presentations. We're looking for sightings of all we have a couple drawings that we show. Okay. And, hey, have you seen something similar to this creature, something that has wings? And actually down here where we live in Hancock County, we've actually pulled out like two, this would be almost three, Hancock and Brooke County, 3 sightings already. So people are seeing, again, these winged entities. We kind of say Mothman for the creature that was seen down at Point Pleasant. So people are seeing these things. They don't know who to go to. Yeah. Because if you go to a regular Bigfoot group about these, they're going to say, well, we just deal in Bigfoot. We deal in all cryptids, and that's how we're able to get some of these stranger cryptid sightings. So.
Yeah, and it makes you also think about the fact that, when you're getting reports of sightings, you're only getting maybe the top 10% of people who actually see something. I mean, the majority of people are not going to go out of their way to contact a researcher, so you have to put that into perspective that, if you're getting reports and they're picking up, you have to think about the amount of reports that people aren't reporting who are seeing these creatures. And another thing too, is like Pennsylvania in that area has been kind of a hot spot. In your years of researching over there, I'm sure you've seen things pick up, as you said. But what do you think Pennsylvania has so much high strangeness involved with it?
Well, we have an area here called the Chestnut Ridge. I'm sure you guys have probably heard about it in passing or things like that.
Yeah, documentary on that. Really cool.
Yeah, and just Pennsylvania is mountainous. A lot of it's mountainous. It's got a history. It's got a long history of good researchers in the state that have been researching it for years. And I just think, a lot of ghostly legends, Gettysburg, things like that. It's just Pennsylvania, and over right next to it in Ohio also. In Ohio, you have Bigfoot organizations tripping over each other. There's so many of them. You're getting more and more in Pennsylvania too, and they're more vocal now. They're out there. They're getting more reports. I just think that down here is a different animal. People in West Virginia very tight-lipped.
Yeah.
They keep a lot of this stuff to themselves. We had a town hall at that Tomlinson Run on a Friday night. Not one person talked. So we had to talk about some of our experiences. We had a couple of friends of ours come down, what they've seen. Didn't want to talk. We're actually doing a big event down in Bass Pro Cabela's in Weirton, in Wheeling, November 18th. And the 17th, we're doing a town hall. So we're going to see who wants to talk down there, because again, we're trying to do the northern panhandle of West Virginia now that we live on the tip of the northern panhandle. And this getting the people to talk down here will be the biggest challenge of our lives. I mean, we've got a couple. Slowly but surely, I think as we, the longer we go here and keep promoting, we have some events coming up, talks. The longer we do that, I think people, hey, they've been here a couple years now, let's go talk to them. They're not going to laugh at us. And I think West Virginia is just, my friend Fred Saluga calls it the Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, because there's so much things that are going to come out of here, guys. We're excited as hell to be down here, and it's going to be a long process. But I think that once we can break through, I think the reports will come pouring in down here. I really do.
Have you heard any abnormal reports from the normal cryptid creatures you hear? Like, have you got like a one-off that kind of like piqued your interest, or like something you've never even heard before?
We actually got this really weird one. It was up towards Kecksburg where the alleged object crashed in '65.
Yeah.
And we knew the gentleman a little bit. He was in law enforcement, and his wife and son were driving up towards Kecksburg, and they were real excited. They said, "Yeah, you won't believe what we saw." I said, "Well, what'd you see?" And you could tell he was really hyped up. He had just seen this, right? He says, "We're driving down the road. This big," and you're gonna laugh. He said it looked like a black elongated snake that went out in the middle of the road, divided into segments, went into a circle, connected all together, and ran across the road.
Yeah.
Whoa.
And
that's bizarre.
It's really weird. So what we did is there is like a small rodent that there'll be the mom and there'll be the babies, and they will run in a direction, and they will be almost look like they're one big long.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I know what you're talking about.
I know what you're talking about.
And we've all seen it. And
how big was it? Did he describe?
I'm trying to think. Maybe 4.5, 5 feet, maybe.
Wow, that's a lot.
So
pretty big.
Again, now what could have happened? Maybe in that
rodent's been busy.
yeah, and maybe when they went, they got separated, and somehow they went in a circle following each other, and then when they reconnected, they went off on the side of the road. That's probably ended up what happened in that. But that was kind of the weirdest, and I don't want to say cryptid because,
right.
I mean, I've never heard like a segmenting snake.
Just something strange.
Yeah,
that's why we like you, Brian, because you're so level-headed.
Oh, we try. We like to try to get to the truth.
Yeah.
We actually. I don't know if you guys have heard of the Shenango dog boy.
No, never heard of it.
I'll just give you a real condensed thing. So in the late 50s, early 60s, there was a phenomenon that people were seeing this little, they called it like that. They called it the dog boy. It did wear some clothes, but it was like all covered in hair. It had it had kind of like hoof cloven hands. It had this red eye. It had eyes were red, and one drooped down. And
Nightmare fuel.
And it's on Monsters and Mysteries in America. If you type in Shenango Dog Boy, that'll come up. We took that. Our organization took that, and those two eyewitnesses, we brought them to them. Wow. We brought them the story. Now they kind of took some liberties with it. Hey, surprise, surprise, TV taking liberties. That doesn't happen, right? So, just to make a long story short. We actually found somebody. We went up to Erie, Pennsylvania, and we at a MUFON conference, and we had the little thing. Have you seen this creature? And somebody, oh, you mean the Erie Wolf Boy? I said, no, I'm sorry. This is the Shenango Valley Dog Boy. No. This is the Erie Wolf Boy. He lived on Peach Street. Okay, he lived in a house.
So this was a person.
Ended up being a boy. We figure it ended up being a boy because people there knew. He looked like he wore clothes, but he looked like a wolf. And what happened is there's something out there called hypertrichosis, which is commonly called, guess what? Werewolf syndrome.
Yeah, there was a circus
all covered
act.
in hair.
There was a family from Mexico that had that disorder.
Yes, exactly.
Wow. Yeah.
And we believe he had some malformities. And the interesting thing, but really the connection for both, they said that he lived in the basement, and they had bars on the basement, and they had a red light on for him. Red light eye condition.
Yeah.
So we kind of putting two and two together. We're like, this was just a boy, and we kind of put that to rest. This was no wolf boy, no werewolf offspring or anything.
Right.
This was a
Thank
boy
goodness.
who had, we believe, had hypertrichosis, and he moved from Shenango to Erie, where he ended up dying. They said in the I think it was the late 80s, early 90s. So we feel that we kind of put that, the legend of the dog boy out there will always live. But that's all it is the legend. And a lot of legends, like you guys know, they are based on some truths.
Yeah, of course.
You know,
Something
kind of like,
starts
old fisherman. I caught a fish this big, right? You caught a fish,
Yeah.
but it was this. It wasn't this.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
stories do grow larger over time.
Sure they do.
Yes.
What do you think about when it comes to the Bigfoot phenomenon, about, people setting trail cameras out, and for whatever reason, they're avoiding trail cams and other devices, and not only that, but it almost seems like they're aware of these objects as well. I mean, what do you think about that? I mean, I've heard so many stories about, oh, if you set a trail camera out, you'll run these creatures off if they're like if they're like around your house. It's like, if you want to get rid of a Bigfoot that's like around your house, put up a trail camera. Boom.
I actually tell them that. I actually say,
Yeah.
you want to get rid of it, set up a couple trail cams. You'll never see them again.
See 'em.
So,
like, what do you think about that? Obviously, them avoiding, or sometimes, occasionally you'll see videos where you see like a hand coming up, and it's like messing with the trail camera, and you can see, hair coming off of like fingers and stuff like that. What do you think about all of that?
well, they I mean, some of the researchers claim that they can actually hear that that small little hum inside of when it's on. Others say that they can see that light. And
I think they can see
Infrared.
that. I think they can see
in the
IR
infrared.
lights.
So again, if you're asking me, I'm saying those sound like plausible explanations. They know the woods, that's their home, right?
Yeah.
Maybe they, hey, something that doesn't feel right to them, they hear something, they're looking around, what's that up there? I'm gonna go over here around it.
Yeah.
And that's why you somehow see that. Again, just guesses, guys. I mean, I wish I knew, but I'm like, they sound like good guesses, right? I mean, I don't know.
So, Brian, what physical evidence have you seen? Like anything like orbs, anything of that nature?
As far, like I said, like, the physical is, just the one print, possibly those two prints the one time, again, possibly. As far as like physical evidence, I mean, we've seen taking pictures of, we just call them imprints. They kind of maybe look like a foot, but I mean, I can't even, I don't count those. I really don't. We do take pics of them and things like that. And, but not really more anecdotal evidence with all of these things. So, I wish I could tell you, I had all these casts. We just don't.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead, Christian.
I heard you say earlier that y'all were using night vision. What other kind of technology is it that y'all are using to kind of search for these creatures? And like, have you found any kind of tech to help you actually spot these occurrences?
Well, we have a parabolic. We have parabolic, my older one. We have the night vision, like, and we also have a thermal. It's an older one, and it's funny, since I bought that thermal. I mean, I've seen other animals. I've seen deer. I've seen probably raccoons, but never seen anything since I got it. It's almost like a bad luck charm. I've got it, and I bought it used, and that was about like 6 or 7 years ago. Those are the three pieces we use a lot, or recorder too. If we hear any screams, or those are the four, obviously cameras in the day and things like that. But that's what we use. We don't have any really high tech stuff.
Yeah.
We're on a Bigfooter's budget, which means we're broke.
Yeah, I saw a video the other day where some people found some tracks, and they were actually getting like radioactive readings from the air, like spiked readings. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
Joe Purdue and Ron Lanham from West Virginia, they had that happen in a case, and it's something we do actually have that, and we're going to start taking that with us, a little mini Geiger counter. So we actually just got one of those about 6 months ago. So we're going to start carrying that with us in case, let's say, we do see something that maybe looks like an imprint. We'll take background first, and then we'll put it right over the print. Now, I think when they caught it, they caught a little bit of background radiation. like shortly after that they found that print. Like if we would go in there 2 or 3 days after, and let's say we did find the print, probably the chances of nothing. But hey, who knows if it maybe if it is reading higher, or also we have an EMF meter too. If all of a sudden you put these instruments over that print, what happens if they spike a little bit? I mean, you
Yeah.
obviously write down the data, but if there's nowhere else and they spike on that, so maybe, I mean, what is this creature? Is it?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to say you got a radioactive Bigfoot out there because that's
Yeah.
that
Say
would
it.
be on a horror movie, right?
Well,
But
Well, that
man, it's
that
like
actually is a movie. I can't remember who's the guy. He's got the big mustache. There's a movie about him going in and like hunting for Bigfoot, and the reason was because it was like contaminated with radiation or like some kind of sickness. It's actually a really good movie. I wish I could. I think it's called Killing Bigfoot or something. But
oh, I'd have to check. I
what
don't
is
know.
it?
Yeah,
It's like, is it Sam Elliott that I'm thinking of?
I didn't
The
see that
actor?
one. I mean, I've seen a lot of the bad Bigfoot movies out there. I've not seen that one yet, but I will watch. I mean, I watched a movie called Bigfoot versus Zombies one time, and it was horrible.
yeah.
And
There's
so yeah,
plenty
there's
plenty of bad
it
Bigfoot
was. I think
movies
it was
out
on
there.
Tubi. If you guys want to watch it,
Speaking of that, what do you think, obviously Bigfoot's more popular than it ever has been, but what do you think about, and there's also, along with that, there's a lot of nonsense out there too. There's people, I'm not going to name any names because we don't trash talk on this show, but there's people who have YouTube channels that constantly get all this Bigfoot activity and record all these noises and things. And what do you think that helps things, or maybe pique people's interest, even though it's probably garbage? What do you think about all the content that comes out regarding Bigfoot, including some TV shows that are clearly staged, but the average person probably, I work in television, so I can see something that's staged a mile away. But yeah, I think there was a show called Killer Alaska Bigfoot. I mean, clearly that was not real, but they portray it as real. Um, how do you how do you how do you go through that kind of material, and what do you think it does at the end of the day for the phenomena itself?
it probably. I think it hurts. It hurts the legitimacy of of the field. You know, one of the ones finding Bigfoot. Uh, you know, I've gotten into the talk. Has it helped or has it hurt Bigfooting?
Right.
Uh, it has helped in the one way I do believe it helped was with the town hall concept, which it got people from all across the United States to come to these and tell their stories. And
Yeah.
after that, more people kind of took the Bigfoot phenomena seriously. Okay. But on the other hand, a lot of people thought, hey, all I got to do is go out there, bang on a tree, and do a couple of whoops, and these Bigfoot are going to come flying in. I mean, it doesn't work like that, guys. But um, it is one of the more popular shows out there. I mean, I tried to watch as many as I could because I'm always trying to pick little information and tidbits out. Now there are some obviously that are totally faked and hoaxed, and I'm like you. I don't want to get into them. I think people know
Yeah.
which ones they are, and it doesn't matter what I think. Uh, I think they want to put out content, and I think most people. Now there are some that will believe anything you put out there, and
Yeah.
that's more on them, I think. But it probably hurts, but at least it does get the subject matter of Bigfoot out. So it's kind of like it could be both. Might hurt a little bit more, but not a ton more. You see what I mean? There's pros
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
cons and everything.
I'm not hating on anybody who's doing a good job, but it kind of irks me when I know when this is really theatrics, and there's people out there who are really, I have some buddies who are, call themselves Bigfoot researchers, and I look at them as that way, but they'll tell you straight up, they don't ever get shit. And it's tough. It's
We,
here, it's here in Florida, man. I mean, like, it's not a rewarding job to be a Bigfoot researcher. It's not. I mean, if anything, like getting past the frustration of not being, getting anything, and it's tough. Um,
It's
let's
the
let
experience, though. I think it's experience. It's
it
you're out
is
there. You're out there with friends. You're out there at
I
night. It's just
camaraderie.
yeah, exactly. And hey, if we never find anything, because there's probably, I always say, there's less time in front of us now as we're
Yeah,
older than there is in back of us. And if I never see anything or never find anything, or I should say our organization, it's not just me,
yeah,
then we get it. You know what? We can legitimately say, we tried when we were out there. We tried. We tried to talk to the.
yeah.
We tried the best that we could. Um, and we also had our this thing called life, our life and our
Yeah,
job.
I
You,
hear you.
we were never the kind that we were going to be out there 24/7. We couldn't.
Yeah.
We had kids growing up. We had jobs. You have to balance it out too. Now I know there's people out there like every night or every day
Oh yeah.
doing this,
Yeah.
and
They eat, breathe, and sleep it.
yeah. Now especially now, we're not. We do the best we can. We go out
Yeah.
when we can, but we also enjoy life. We also enjoy movies. We also go out, and my wife and I go out on dates. We do things.
Yeah.
We don't just can't just do one thing.
No. Let's pivot real quick. Let's jump from Bigfoot to Dogman. That is something that I used to think was complete nonsense, because it's hard to believe if no one's ever heard of a Dogman. It's what you would describe as your stereotypical werewolf. Dogmen are described as big as 8 to 10 feet tall, jacked. They look like bodybuilders with a. Some people even describe Dogman as looking like Anubis, the
Yeah, yeah.
Egyptian god, especially with the ears that point up.
Mhm.
You do hear a variety of like descriptions of how people to actually describe Dogman. When did Dogman kind of come on your radar, and have you heard reports of that in your area? And what do you think about
Yeah,
it?
2007 was our first investigation. Our friend Jody Cook gave us an eyewitness name out of Cuyahoga Falls, Ohio. So we went there and we interviewed her, and she actually had a sighting, which happened in the summertime. She was coming home late at night, and she says she sees this thing cross the roads from left to right, and she says this looked like a. She goes, this creature looked like the creature from an American Werewolf in London, and she
Wow.
said it was
Yeah,
running across the road. She goes, almost looked like it was morphing. She said you saw fur, but you saw big patches of skin. Okay,
yeah,
and she says this thing ran, and which is interesting, ran right towards a power substation on the other side of the road. Now, what was interesting about that is we got a couple other reports where these creatures were either running close to a power substation, or somebody saw it when there was lightning and a heavy electrical discharge in the area. So we're thinking, could possibly be these type creatures? Could they be interdimensional, and could they
yeah,
only appear if there's some kind of electrical power source, electrical surge, weather conditions, space weather? There's all kind of variables that maybe, hey, if all these variables occur, maybe one of these creatures shows up. Again, I'm not
yeah,
saying this is what's happening. I'm just telling you in some of our cases that we got. And even a gentleman named Barton Nunnally caught a case in Kentucky where a farmer was out on his tractor and in a field. He says he looks in the field and sees this shimmer like you would like driving down
right.
a hot road in the summertime.
Like
Probably happens in
the
Georgia a
illusion
lot,
type
I'm
thing.
sure,
Yeah,
because it's really hot
Oh
down
yeah.
there. He says there's a shimmer, and this dog man type creature steps out of it. It's looking around, it sniffs the air, and then it sees the farmer, and it looks like it growls, and it walks back, and it disappears into this thing.
yeah,
Nope.
Please tell me what that is. I don't
yeah.
know. I mean,
I,
is
I,
that an interdimensional type thing?
well, I would definitely argue out of all the cryptids, the Dogman phenomenon seems to be something that it does seem to be flesh and blood. People describe it as being not a ghost or an apparition, but a physical creature. But you know a lot of it to me seems like it's people describe it as demonic. Like no one ever sees a dog man and goes, "Oh, he was cute and he was interested," and
No, they're
wanted to.
menacing. Yeah,
Yeah, it's always a sense of dread. People say the same thing. This overpowering sense of fear
they
and
look
dread.
through you. Yeah, they look
Yeah,
through you almost.
and
Yeah.
you hear all these anecdotal stories, and I've heard some stories where I'm just like, that person's telling the truth. Like they're not bullshitting. They saw something. Whether it's a dog man. That's I guess that's open for debate. But I do believe that they saw and experienced something that would bring them to tears. I mean, you can't fake that type of authenticity that these people were reliving. I mean, you just can't do that. And you're hearing all these anecdotal stories from people who don't even know each other, who were saying the same thing about the same creature, describing the same attributes, describing the same way that it operated, the same almost personality of this creature, you know. And it's one thing if you're hearing, oh, I heard one story that someone saw like a werewolf. Okay, I'm not really going to invest much stock into that. It's interesting, but I can't really, you know, invest too much into a one-off type thing. But I've heard it over and over and
Yes.
over again. And I mean, I've heard them so many times now that there's got to be something to it.
Yeah.
And then to top it off, back in the mid 80s, we lived in a place that was very remote in West Texas. And my brother told me about one day he saw a coyote that approached him, or he described it as a coyote. And he was only like 5 or 6 when it happened. But he said all of a sudden, this coyote stood up on 2 legs. And for years, for like 20 or 30 years, 30 years plus, I never believed him. I love my brother, and brother, if you're listening, I love you dearly. But I did not believe that story back then. Hopefully, you'll understand. But when I started hearing these Dogman reports, and then I remembered his story, it blew me away. I immediately reached out to him and I said, "Hey, man, I don't doubt you any longer. Like, have you ever heard of Dogman?" And so I started sending him these stories about Dogman creatures, and as funny as it is for someone who actually saw what he didn't see, a big giant menacing 8 foot tall creature that stood up. He literally saw something that was the size of like a medium sized dog or a large dog. So I don't know what to think about that. I know I've heard of people, you know, seeing some smaller ones, so to speak, but normally they're giant and menacing.
Yeah.
And the way people describe them too it's so unnatural, where they'll talk about how it had like shark's teeth, and like the people always describe the teeth, that the teeth were very unnatural looking, like they look like something out of they always just describe it as demonic. That's the best way to describe it. You know, so I tend to believe that there's something to it, but I also believe with all these stories that are being told, either it is some type of demonic entity, or I believe that it is something that is coming in and out of our reality. I wouldn't even begin to even understand how that happens or why that happens, but I don't believe that it's just some unknown creature that just happened to be living its normal best life here, you know, in North America, doing its thing. You know, there's something more to that.
Yeah, because if you say, okay, hey, I think there's dogmen, there's winged entities, there's dogmen, there's all these different creatures out in the woods. It does strain the credibility of how are all these things out there constantly all the time, not interacting more, not getting to fights even, or
Yeah.
it just strain. So your temp, your interdimensional type thing. Hey, they're here for a while, they're gone. They're here for a while, they're gone. Might make sense more in like a winged entity or a dogman than a Bigfoot type case,
Right.
because Bigfoot type cases are all over the place, and some of them say, hey, they've been in this area for a long time, things like that. So again, maybe Bigfoot could actually be out there, but these other creatures can pop somehow that we don't know, pop in and out. Again, we don't know. We wish we did.
Yeah. I mean, what are your thoughts overall on all of these creatures? I mean, are you just open to the idea that they're real and they exist, or do you believe that there's really something to it?
I especially in the case of Bigfoot, I think somehow that this creature's there, whether it can hide very well, or what, whatever, or could it be an interdimensional, or maybe some people would say even an extraterrestrial type creature.
Yeah.
I do believe when people see it, they're seeing a flesh and blood creature, 100% flesh and blood creature.
Yeah.
Some of these other creatures, yeah, they seem to be flesh and blood when they see them, but then they're gone in a short period. You don't hear about them anymore. So
Yeah.
if I didn't think any of these things had any of what we research had any substance or backbone, we would have quit a long time ago.
Yeah, I agree. Um, and what keeps you going through all this? I mean, you've been doing this for such a long time. What keeps you, interested in this phenomenon and keep searching for it?
Validation, just validation, a possible sighting. Honestly, I mean, I know that maybe that sounds, you know, it's like, oh, that's all it is. No, it's validation for myself, for my wife, for all the years we put in it, for all the money we've put in this. I really believe, and I've told people this, if I can get a really good look, especially at a Bigfoot, I may step away from that part of the research. I might not research Bigfoot anymore. Concentrate on the other ones. I want to see
Yeah,
one, and after that, I can, like I had said before, prove to that little geek in the
yeah.
70s who's watching all these shows that, yeah, this thing really did exist. And after all those years, I finally got a glimpse of one. I know it might not, as far as us ever finding evidence of one, I don't think that's going to
Well, of course it's not going to happen because the only people who ever see Bigfoot are the people who aren't looking for it. Anybody knows that.
happen.
That's
It really
that's that's
seems like
how
it,
it
huh?
works.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah,
mean, everybody who finds Bigfoot is not looking for Bigfoot, or more than likely probably doesn't even believe in it. It's always like a
exactly. Yeah,
hunter
it's kind of
or
like unfair if you think about it. Yeah.
I know it's like a cruel joke. It's like, don't look for me and you'll find me.
There you,
Do you
That's
maybe
think
it.
that's
there's
what
a
I'm going to start. I'm going to quit looking for him today. I guess maybe I'll
There you
see him
go.
tomorrow.
That's your secret.
do you ever think there's a purpose behind these sightings? Like there's a reason why it's presenting itself to certain people?
I think sometimes too, it's some of it's dumb luck. I
Yeah.
mean, right place, right time. Patterson film, I still think it was real. Right
Yeah,
place, right time.
I believe
He
that's real
got the
footage.
got the Mega Million lottery. Boom, boom. He won it. Uh, Other times, I think it's possible this creature could be on, like my wife and I always talk about frequencies.
Hmm.
These creatures may vibrate. We all have a frequency, a vibration.
Right.
Maybe they could vibrate at a certain frequency, and say you two can see it, but I can't because I'm
Yeah.
not vibrating at that. Maybe I'm not projecting vibration, whatever term you want to put on that.
No, I understand
A
what you're
lot of Native
saying.
Americans see these creatures. Are they, you know, so again, why? I mean,
Well,
I
speaking,
wish you could tell me.
yeah.
I really do. I don't know.
Speaking of that, I mean, obviously there's a lot of folklore with Native Americans. What do you know, and what have you in your research? How important is folklore when it comes to cryptozoology? And cryptids, especially like Native American folklore. Have you kind of dived into that? Have you studied any of that? And what do they
Well,
think of
I
it?
know that you can just read almost uh, any Bigfoot book, and it'll tell you about Native American legends and stories of a ape-like creature. I mean, all across the United States, and uh, so they believe that it was something. Some believe it was a spirit, keeper of the woods, or
Yeah.
certain things like that, and they held them in reverence, and don't go looking for them and things like that. So I think the Native Americans only they talked about things that you know uh, animals, spirits, nature that they saw or they knew about. So yeah, I think the Native Americans uh, they're more in tune to seeing them. I really do believe that.
Yeah, and it's not just the white man who, people hunters out in the woods of Pennsylvania or Florida who are coming up with this. I mean, this is something that goes far, pretty far
Yeah,
back. And not only that, but it's a global phenomenon as
yeah.
well, which makes it even stranger. I mean, in Australia, I mean, honestly, some of the best evidence I've seen recently was some thermal footage out of Australia. I'm not sure if you've seen that or not.
I
No.
know of the Yowie, probably, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
it is absolutely incredible footage.
Really?
There's this group out there. I think they're called Yowie hunters.
Okay.
On YouTube, but I would really look it up, and the footage is absolutely incredible. But they had some thermal cameras, and one guy was honestly he was just out trying to test it while they were actually researching at night, and he was actually trying to dial in the settings of this thermal camera, I do believe, and that's when he started hearing some noises and started pointing his thermal camera out there and caught not only one of these creatures but two of these creatures on camera. And on the thermal footage, you can see, and it's very thick foliage that they're shooting through, But what you see in the thermal footage is very clear heat signature of humanoid, stocky looking creatures. You don't see like any hair or anything like that hanging off of it. It's a very bulky kind of humanoid looking creature. But in one part of the video, you can actually see it reach down and grab what looks like a rock or something, and it tosses it.
Wow, I gotta watch. I gotta
Yeah,
look at
I'm
this.
I'm
Yeah.
telling you, like it's pretty good. It's pretty good footage. Normally, I don't brag about Bigfoot footage because it's always so debatable, but these guys are very legit at what they do, and the footage is absolutely incredible. But you know what? What speaking of that, I mean, what footage have you seen, or do you think that is some of the best evidence out there is that's so far been captured or documented?
I still think the Patterson film. I know that's been rehashed over and over again, but I've met Bob Gimlin a couple times, and I do believe that what they saw was a creature. Some people say, well, what if it was proved that it was 100% fake? I said, even if it was proved it was 100% fake, that doesn't discount all the thousands of sightings after that. So
Yeah.
I think this phenomena is real, and people are still seeing something. And guaranteed, there's footage out there that uh, maybe even rivals that, or it's even better now with our technology. But people aren't going to share it,
Yeah.
or they're going to wait till they put it in a documentary, or they want to make money off of it, or things like that. So I still think the best footage is to come, and I think they got there's some stuff out there, guys. I think that's just not being released, and will eventually be released, and we'll say, wow, it
Yeah.
took you this long, or
I
I
agree.
do think it's out there. I really do.
I
Have you
agree.
have you ever read The Long Walk? I think that's the name of it. Have you ever heard about that story?
I've not read that one, no.
There's it's interesting. Somebody was telling me about it a couple of years back about it was I might mess this up a little bit, but it was about the story of these guys escaping from like Russia. They were trying to come down and they had to go over like the Andes or whatever that mountain range is right there. And the story was kind of more about, them escaping and getting to this other like safe area. But while they were in the mountain ranges, they came across these two creatures, essentially like Yetis.
Okay.
And it said it like totally freaked them out. And this guy who was originally writing the book, he was like trying to focus more on about their journey. And then he heard about that and he was like, wait a minute, y'all saw what? And then they kind of made the book kind of more along that. I'm trying to look it up. I think it's called The Long Walk.
Okay.
Is it based on actual events, or is it?
Yeah, apparently it's from this guy's like it was a group of guys. They were, from what I remember being told, I haven't read it, but I was told about it. It was like they were in this cave one night, trying to shelter from the weather. And in the morning, they heard these horrible like howling noises. And they were like, what in the world is that? And they kind of went out of this area and they looked down into this valley and they said they saw these two what looked like humanoid creatures kind of like facing off with each other, kind of like howling at one another. And they like the group of the guys were like, what in the world is
Yeah.
going on? Like,
That's
what is it?
typical of like Bigfoot stuff.
And then like I guess I don't know if they made a noise or something, but it alerted those creatures to them, and they said like they like turned and looked at them, and the guys were like, oh hell no, and they like got out of there and they just kept on their journey. I'm trying to look it up, but
Okay.
what I'm coming up is it's called the Long Walk, I think. But
All right, I'll
see
put
if I
that on
can.
my Bigfoot to watch
Yeah, when I
list.
heard about it, I was like, whoa, that's pretty interesting because initially it was not about that encounter at all. But
That's
the guy
interesting.
doing the story was like, wait a minute, we gotta dive into this because this is like way crazy.
Well, there's another really bizarre kind of Bigfoot story, and it's about the Russian hikers that ended up dying.
Mm.
Yeah.
What's
Yeah.
that incident? I forget the name of the actual.
Dolotov Pass or something, I think,
Yes,
right?
that's
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Now, granted, I'm not saying that, they were killed by Bigfoot. I don't necessarily believe that. But there was apparently, according to like some of their journals, there was something that they were encountering, or there
Yeah.
was some creature or person that was following them. And then
Yes.
when they found their camera, there's a there's an infamous picture of this
Yeah, I remember
creature
that.
that's like peering from behind a tree.
Oh,
And
no way.
yeah, this is legit. This is from their camera,
You
and
could
that
you could find that on you. Yeah,
yeah, and the pictures, it's not even up for debate whether it's a fake or like somebody put that into the story, within the past, decade or whatnot. That picture was found on the actual camera when they recovered their bodies, and the entire story is completely like an absolute mind fuck, so to speak. But it was interesting that, what was that creature that you can see it? It's just a big, dark silhouette of
yeah,
a humanoid looking creature peering from behind a
yeah. It was
tree.
pretty weird. Yeah,
Absolutely. I mean, and in Russia, what do they call it?
urine.
It's urine, or is that Asia? Which one's it?
Oh, yeah, it might be the Almasty,
Yeah,
Almasty. Yeah,
yeah,
sorry. Yeah,
Almasty, and then in Asia, it's the urine.
urine. Yeah, yeah. That's right.
Obviously, in North America, we got about 20 different names for it, but
Hmm.
there's even a creature. We got Yowie in Australia. You have the orang pendek.
And interesting, I got to tell you a quick
Sure.
question about a story about that orang pendek. Now, in Finding Bigfoot, one of the better episodes where they went over there, they interviewed an eyewitness who said what happened when this orang pendek saw you. Now they're the smaller version,
Yeah,
right?
they're small.
Which is interesting though. He says it put its hands above its head
Hmm.
to make it look bigger, and then it growled at them.
Yeah.
Okay, so Beaver County, 1970, at Brady's Run Park, two ladies are riding up their horses right after a bad storm. One of them looks off to the left. This big creature stands up. What does it do? Puts its hands up, growls at them to make it look even bigger. And it was big. She said it looked like it was 6 foot tall. This one. So
Yeah.
here's two same behaviors on two different continents where they put their hands above their head and they growled like to make themselves more ferocious. And
Yeah.
I thought that when I saw that, I'm like, wow,
Well, and as fascinating as that is, you have plenty of Vietnam veterans who
yep,
swear they encountered that creature in the jungles of
yeah, the rock
Vietnam,
apes, yeah, yeah,
the rock apes as they called it. And there's Vietnam veterans to this day who say we
who swear
saw
by it, yes,
we saw this bizarre humanoid ape-like man that was some I remember there was a really cool encounter that some helicopter guys, they were
yeah, I
flying
remember hearing that.
around in their Huey, and there was this man-like hairy creature that was in a tree, I think, like throwing branches at him or something like
Yeah,
that. I mean, really cool story, but that just, that's kind of the interesting thing about the whole Bigfoot thing, man, is like, the more you dig into it, the less you know, and the weirder it gets. I mean, it's one thing when you have like a creature that's, oh, okay, it's in here in North America. How do you explain a creature that's living in Australia, a giant island? How did that
exactly,
happen?
exactly.
How do they have continuous global sightings everywhere on every continent in the world? South America, I forget the name of it, but apparently they have one in the jungles that they report about,
Hmm.
stealing chickens and screaming, and it has some of the same attributes as it's how people describe it here in the United States. So, you know, it's just the entire thing is super bizarre, but it just keeps bringing me in. There's just so much to it, and I'm sure you can understand that, Brian. It's like
Yeah.
once you start getting into it, it's so hard to walk away from it.
Oh,
As
you just.
frustrating as it is, I mean, damn it, it really is. Especially being a researcher like yourself. I mean,
Hmm.
it's tough.
I always
Um,
say the long research it, the dumber I get. It seems like.
yeah,
I mean,
I hear you.
really, it's kind of like almost counterproductive. It's like, well, you know what? What about this? No, no, no. Now there's this. I'm like, oh
Yeah.
man, what's next?
Well, Brian, do you have any big projects that you're working on? You've done so much work in the paranormal or cryptid world. You have anything upcoming that people should know about?
We're actually doing a fundraiser in DuBois this Saturday. It's called
Mm,
Squatch Out Cancer, and
okay.
Oh,
myself
cool.
and yeah, and myself and two other groups of researchers have Bigfoot talks, and they're trying to raise money for cancer research, and there'll be gift baskets, there'll be bands there, other vendors, so it's going to be a fun little. My wife and I are going to give everybody gets a half-hour presentation, so
That's cool.
that's kind of cool. That's the next
Yeah,
thing
that's
we're doing.
awesome.
So, yeah,
Well, I think that'll be pretty much it from us, man. I think we're gonna wrap it up. But if
Okay.
people want to learn more about you, Brian, and some of the work that you've done and some of the documentaries and films and stuff like that, where can people go to learn more about you?
We have 2 Facebook pages if you would like to go to Center for Crypto Studies, Cryptozoological Studies on Facebook, or Center for Unexplained Events on Facebook, or just look me up, Bryan Seech. I post uh, as long as you guys can take like Godzilla movies and
Yeah,
talking
yeah,
about the Steelers and other goofy stuff like that. Then we do all of our events we put on there. So just message me if anyone's had a sighting, especially in Pennsylvania, West Virginia, and Ohio. Please get in touch with me. I'd love to hear it.
yeah.
Bigfoot, Mothman, Dogman, whatever it is.
Dig it. And we hope to have you back on again sometime, man. Bring you
Sure, I
back
had a
on.
great
And
time. I appreciate you guys having me on. It was just cool.
absolutely. Well, it's been
Oh
a
yeah,
real
of
pleasure.
course.
And like I said, you've in my humble opinion, you're one of the few real professionals in this realm. Being level-headed and bringing some professionality to it. And I wish there was more people like you in this Bigfoot world and cryptid world. But really proud of the work you've done, and really, it's been an honor to have you on the show and talk about all
Yeah.
these things.
Thank you. I appreciate the kind words. That's cool. You like
Yeah,
when
man.
people kind of recognize, what your organization, I still call it, does.
Sure.
So
I would
appreciate it.
definitely recommend checking out some of Brian's work. What was the last thing you were on? You were on the Small Town Monsters.
About
Uh,
West Virginia, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
We have.
that was a good one. Go check out Small Town Monsters, one of their latest documentaries. Brian was on there. He brought a plethora of good information to that documentary.
Yeah,
Well done, sir.
thanks. We have a
Christian,
couple more episodes coming up. One is going to deal with the Panhandle. That should be coming out in the next couple months. I'm excited about that one. We'll be on that one a lot. So
yeah, awesome. Actually,
Be looking forward to it.
we have Alec Petrikov coming on next Thursday.
cool.
So we're going to talk about his travels from Canada and
Oh, he's been
Alaska.
all over
And
the place. I envy
yeah,
him. Yeah.
he's such a good dude. And
Oh, he is. I just
he-
met him a couple months ago.
yeah, super level-headed too, man. I love him.
Exactly.
We've been social media buddies for quite some time. So it'll actually be like the first time like we actually get chat kind of face to face
Cool.
on here. So it'll be a lot of fun. Christian, you got anything else for him?
I'm good.
All right. Well, I think that's going to wrap it up for us tonight. Thank you guys for joining us so much, and hope to see you here next time.
Sure.
See
Sure.
you.
Thanks a lot. I appreciate it, guys. You have a good night.
Adios.